Teal dear.
Call Mr. Plough. That's my name. That name again is Mr. Plough.
Indeed, although given what this video is about, I get the distinct feeling that that should probably be Ms. Plough, because the snowploughing industry is apparently a strong independent fish who don't need no bicycle. Until, of course, they fuck everything up, and they need someone to come and bail them out of it. So, something a little bit lighter-hearted here, and no less than 3 years in the making. And given the fact that winter is upon us, and it is that glorious cold season, where everyone goes around with the deadly sniffle virus, some people would call it pneumonia. I prefer to call it pneumonuma. It's so much more fun that way, with the my he, my who, my ha, my I. Anyway, terrible dad tear jokes aside, let's actually get stuck right on into the topic today, shall we? Many, many moons ago, Sweden, being the progressive, tolerant society that it is, had one of its political parties propose gender-equal snowploughing, with the Shadow City Commissioner, Daniel Helden, stating, "Stockholm is a modern city and needs a modern way of ploughing. Giggity. We need access to everyone in the city. Today, it's mostly men who are prioritized when it comes to snowploughing. What we want is a more gender-equal ploughing system." Inspired by authorities in the municipality of Karlskoga, Helden explained that snowplows in Stockholm targeted areas frequented by men, such as the roads, rather than entries to daycares, footpaths and cycle paths, which are more often used by women. Authorities explained that the system did not intentionally discriminate against anyone, rather that it was simply being carried out as it always has been, and that after review, Karlskoga prioritized daycares, where parents usually go first in the morning, followed by areas around the largest workplaces regardless of gender, followed by schools and then main roads. As a result, the municipality noted that it had been more accessible for everyone during and after snowfall, particularly children. Shadow Commissioner Helden, who is also the Vice Chairman of the city's Traffic and Waste Management Committee, then wanted a similar system in place in the capital, and was submitting a detailed proposal to do so. And this article came out in 2013. And at the time, people pointed out that there were several problems with the overall scheme. First of all, the area that they used as the benchmark compared to Stockholm is a somewhat different environment, different geographical layout, different road layout, different densities of populations, different densities of travel in regards to where all of these places are, like home and business. And at the time, a lot of people were pointing out that you really do need to plough the main roads first of all, because those are the arteries of your country. They are main roads for a reason, because they carry the majority of traffic regardless of gender, and that those areas are going to be used not only by parents taking their kids to school, but they're going to be used by infrastructurally very, very important things, like commercial business and hauling. You know, those little things that ensure that there's food for people to eat, that people can get to really important jobs like electricity plants, water sanitation plants, waste disposal plants. All those tiny little processes that really keep a society functioning. And this proposal carried over into 2014 as well. The specific aim, of course, of this snowploughing change was to make things better for women by focusing on gender equality. And a little bit later you're going to see why I'm constantly putting so much emphasis on this gender equality and better for women rhetoric. And when this was being considered in 2014, the same points were being made. At the moment, Stockholm uses a relatively standard snow clearing strategy that differs little from what other harsh winter cities have chosen to do. They focus their ploughs first on major thoroughfares, then on downtown areas close to major workplaces and construction sites, and finally move on to smaller roads, neighbourhoods and schools. But some in Stockholm's city government have begun to suspect that these long-standing strategies may not best serve all of the city's residents. By focusing on city centre workplaces and construction sites, the Green Party's Daniel Helden suggests the city is implicitly ignoring the places that vulnerable groups, including women and families, frequent most often, His solution? Something he's calling gender-equal ploughing. See, again, we've got this vulnerable groups, do-it-for-the-women, gender-equal rhetoric. Heldon's proposal is modelled on a similar initiative begun last year in the small Swedish city of Karlskoga, around 150 miles due west of Stockholm. After a careful review, the municipality of less than 30,000 adjusted the order in which streets were ploughed in order to better align with the schedules of a busy parents' day. Now they focus first on areas around daycares and schools, where parents stop in before work, before moving on to office districts and main roads. I'd just like to take a little break from the articles here and look at this a little bit more technically for a moment. You're using an area which has a population of only about 30,000 people to dictate how an area with a population of nearly 800,000 should behave. That in itself is already going to be questionable. Secondly, I've just looked up some of these places on a map, and the first thing I'm noticing that's a real big difference between these two places is that Stockholm has significantly more roads in general than Karlskoga, and that I can already see causing a few more problems. If you have a smaller number of roads, and you're ploughing for businesses instead of, say, daycare centres, and then you swap that around, in a lot of cases you're going to be ploughing the same roads anyway because there's so few of them. After all, if you only have one road, all the traffic is going to be going down that one road. Whereas if you begin attempting to apply that same strategy to an area that has multiple roads, you're going to start encountering the problem that there's lots of different ways for people to get to the places that they want to go. Just think about it mathematically. In an area where there's only one road and 3 places to go, they're all along that road, so it doesn't matter which place it is that you're ploughing to get to, you're going to end up getting to those 3 places anyway. If, however, there's 3 roads going to 3 different places, and then you change the priority of which road you're going to plough, well, I'm sure you can then see the problem. Just looking at maps and the very proposal of this idea, you can already begin to see how these problems are going to start arising, because you're attempting to apply one model to 2 areas which are pretty different. Anyway, back to the article from 2014. The concept of this realignment is being sold as a sort of feminist proposal, but also as good overall public policy. You have to look at how a modern city functions today. There are completely different transportation patterns around. The changes, which would also include an emphasis on transit hubs and bike lanes, might even make more sense in a city where, as of 2006, less than half of the region's commuters drove a private car. And this is where you can see why I'm putting so much emphasis on this do-it-for-the-women gender equality rhetoric which is being used to push this proposal. It is, at its very core, a feminist proposal. Because, as we all well know, especially those of us who are more opposed to feminism, feminists do like to think that they have a complete and utter monopoly on the concept of gender equality. And anyone who has read through these articles and knows anything about modern feminism and Sweden will be looking at this and will know that this entire proposal has come about because of feminist rhetoric. Which makes what we're about to look at right now all the more amusing, because in November 2016, they got their way and gender-equal ploughing was brought to Stockholm. And to the surprise of absolutely no one, it was a complete and utter disaster. The new system, which was suggested by progressive politicians, tore up tried and tested snowplow routes and diverted them to areas said to be used more by women. But the inevitable consequence was that other spaces, like main roads, were clogged up for longer, and it became impossible to get around. Public transport failed. Traffic piled up and injuries requiring a hospital visit spiked. The disaster struck despite a $270,000 increase in this year's snow removal budget meant to help the new system succeed. In fact, this shift from ploughing main roads and instead focusing on pedestrian areas, bike paths, and preschools has had even more of an effect than you would initially think. Almost 1 week later, buses are still struggling to run, and some 1,700 public transport passengers are planning to sue. progressive politicians have, of course, gone on the defensive with the MP who suggested it, claiming the snowplows hadn't executed the gender equal plan properly. Of course, because it couldn't have just been a really bad idea that couldn't work under any circumstances. Nope, it's just that you didn't feminism right. That's why the plan failed. Obviously, it's the only possible explanation. These people who professionally remove snow for a living, they do it really, really well on these roads, but when you tell them to go and do it on a different road, they just don't do it right. Because patriarchy. Dun dun dun, lightning. Now, because of how feminism works, this is a pattern which you can see pretty much anywhere. If something works for gender equality, feminists are very quick to claim that it was them who did it, even if the gender equality thing had nothing to do with feminism. And when something that's proposed for gender equality fails, feminists are very quick to keep quiet about it, even if it was their idea, or rant and rave about how this isn't proper feminism. And of course, this is no exception. When asked, is this an example of feminism? If so, does it illustrate failure or poor planning? Feminists have, of course, come out in droves. No, it's an example of something being labelled feminist. The term feminist snowplowing was something cooked up by the media. And this feminist progressive geek goes on to say, reading the municipality's own webpage, we see there's no mention of feminist snowplowing, although the practical result is in line with the tenets of feminism, namely equality. The original stated goal was for equitable snowplowing, which happens to be in line with feminist aims. The municipality's own webpage demonstrates that with a single paragraph nodding toward gender, while actually focusing on the needs of everyone in the city. Right, so you see, it just so happens to be in line with feminism, but it's not real feminism. But feminists love telling you that if you're for gender equality, that means you're a feminist by default. I guess feminism only has a monopoly on gender equality when it works. Because when it doesn't work, oh boy, well that's just not feminism. That's just people trying to be feminist, but failing because the idea was a failure, so clearly it couldn't be feminist. And then we have other people. So according to the article, they prioritized women over men in this situation. Judging by what I read, it looks like it didn't end well. I wouldn't call this feminism by any metric, but the decision made by those politicians show they have the mentality of a feminist, i.e. prioritizing women. Yeah, once again, it just isn't feminism because it didn't work. If this did work, and actually was beneficial, I guarantee you feminists would be hailing this as the great feminist win over winter. It's not an example of feminism. I don't live that far north in Europe, but we all know that General Winter really outdid himself in Sweden this time. It hasn't been that bad in a century. I don't think that a good dose of inequality would have made a difference. Feminism is getting the blame, but it doesn't have that much to do with genuine feminism. It was an effort to give more attention to routes that women are thought to travel, but it failed to take into consideration the egalitarianism of Swedish society. Women go to work in cars too, and men pick up children at school too, so it wasn't really helping women more. I love the full-blown damage control that these people are going into for feminism. The Mayor Daniel Heldon has specifically said, the men and their car travel have always been prioritized highest. It's time to change that. And he's doing this to benefit women for gender equality. And that's not feminism. The mental gymnastics required here is staggering. The most constant defense that we hear from feminists of feminism is, well, it's just about gender equality. That's it. If you believe in gender equality, then you're a feminist. But when an initiative comes along, which specifically says we need to stop prioritizing men, basically playing the men need to check their privilege card. We need to look more at helping women in the name of gender equality. Suddenly, when that fails, it's not proper feminism. It's not real feminism. It's not genuine feminism. Even though it's totally in line with the tenets of feminism, it's not actually feminism. The only reason that these people are claiming that this is not feminism is because it was a failure. People claim that feminism isn't a religion, but this is religious-level thinking. It can't be that it was a ridiculous idea based on a stupid model applied to an area that it would never have worked. Nope, none of that matters. It doesn't matter that it was a stupid idea, that it was completely and utterly terrible and was never going to work. The only reason that this failed is because somebody somewhere didn't feminism hard enough.